Okay, so we had stopped talking about IMC and print media last time, I think. And so we're going to pick up there just as sort of a recap. I'm going to move this back just a little bit. Let's see if I can get a little bit wider angle. Print media has been around a long time. It's one of the oldest forms of information and advertising. It allows for detailed information, and although most print ads today are, glossy, slick in magazines, if you look at advertisements for direct-to-consumer pharmaceuticals, drugs, they do provide a lot of information, like the major side effects down at the bottom of the page, so you can provide a lot of information. You can specialize it to target publications, as I alluded to last time. There are, for every industry and for every hobby, there are publications out there that will target you, and so you can get a highly targeted range in terms of print media. It's got a long life historically. This is becoming less so now, as people are not really paying attention to when they go to doctors' offices and hospitals and things like that. They're not really paying attention to the magazines out, but historically, it had a long life. Lots of people would take in their old magazines to the doctor's offices and leave them there. Other people would pick them up and browse through them and look at stories and look at ads as they're waiting for the doctor. Of course, in this day and age, we're all addicted to our phone, and so we sit there and watch our phone, so that's not necessarily as true as it once was. But it does allow the reader to get information at their own pace. It can be very costly depending on the publication. And I think I told you all at one point in time, the Daily Oklahoman was the most expensive paper in the nation to advertise in, because it had such a following. Even outside of Oklahoma, it was the most conservative paper in the country. And so people would subscribe to it, even though they weren't in Oklahoma, to get that sort of conservative perspective. That's no longer necessarily true, but the cost is still high. If you want to put your ads, for example, if you're Ralph Lauren or Yves Saint Laurent or something like that, you want to put your ad in the Vogue edition. Anybody know what the most expensive edition of Vogue is to advertise in? It's the September edition of Vogue. That's the big fashion. That's the big fashion edition. That's their major publication. So it's very expensive to advertise and things like that. The lead time is pretty long on things like that. If you want to put together an ad, to get it copy ready, it can take a lot of lead time, and you have limited reach. So I think we talked about most of those last time, but just to sort of a recap. Can't see the screen. Which platform are you using? Which platform? I have it pretty WebEx. Let me see if I can get the camera to move. The camera I think in here is screwed up because it's not tracking. So if you're on WebEx and you can't see, you might switch to YouTube, because I do have it pretty good on YouTube. The other option, that's even better. The other option is to follow along with the slides, because the camera's not moving. It's obviously got a problem today. I will put in a report, but if you are on WebEx, I would suggest moving to YouTube. It's always good to have a backup, because technology is fantastic until it fails. Radio. I am live. I've got 6 viewers. Go to Grant Aguirre on YouTube. So search YouTube for Grant Aguirre and it should come up live. Because it is live. I've got 6 people on right now, 7 people on. Did you find it? Let me know if you found it. Radio. The advantages are that it's generally pretty cheap to advertise on radio. The costs are fairly low. You've got a lot of selectivity. You can really target markets that you're interested in. based on geographic. You can find it now. Great. Thank you for letting me know. You can target markets based on geography, for example. So if you're running for office, we just finished a political campaign in Oklahoma. You're obviously not going to be advertising on ABC, NBC, and CBS, and radio is a nice medium to advertise on. It's got a lot of flexibility. You can change things quickly. You can cut ads fairly quickly and get them up. The disadvantages are that it has a potential to have distractions in terms of listeners' attention. When do most people listen to the radio? Now, if you went back in time historically before television, people actually used to listen to the radio, and there were radio like stories that they would put on the radio, and they would have all these sound effects and things like that. Nobody actually does that anymore. People used to listen to, I can't imagine doing this, but my mother, whose mother was a baseball fanatic, used to listen to baseball games on the radio. I can't fathom doing that. I can't imagine anything more boring than listening to a baseball game on the radio, but people used to do that. But when do most people listen to the radio now? Probably you all don't even do this because you probably have Spotify or something else, and you just listen to your music when you're going down the road. But most people listen to the radio where?
In the morning.
In the morning where? In their car, right? In their car going to work. And that's still true of baby boomers for the most part. They still listen to the radio, local radio stations in their car because they may not be used to Spotify or anything like that. So what are you doing when you're in your car? Well, you're distracted. You've got other drivers that are zooming past. You're trying to figure out where you're going to turn, get off on the exit, listen to it on your way to work. Yep. Most people now listen to, Ms. Hicks says, I listen to it on my way to work. Most people now listen to their own music in the radio, in the car rather than the radio, but boomers still listen to the radio. You're distracted, right? You've got a lot of distraction. You've got other things out there. In terms of clutter, you've got billboards that are distracting you, and you're looking at the street signs and things like that. However, in one instance, radio is a better medium than other advertising, and they've done studies on this. In terms of political advertising and going negative, it is the best medium to go negative. Why do you think that is? And it has to do with this idea of listener attention and clutter. Why do you think that it's more effective for negative advertising and political campaigns? And it has to do with this idea of listener attention and clutter, as opposed to television advertising. Any guesses?
I think they probably just say something really bad just to get your attention, and then that's like the only thing you really hear of it before you get distracted with something else.
Okay.
So that just kind of sticks out to you a little bit more.
So you think that if you make a really outrageous claim that you get their attention, and then that stays in your mind.
Yeah, like the Kendra Horn stuff, like you heard the Kendra Horn negative ad thing, it was like Kendra Horn does, and then some outlandish claim after that.
Right,
like,
she votes with Nancy Pelosi 90% of the time. Well, yeah, that's an interesting example, because saying things like Kendra Horn votes with Nancy Pelosi, the honest to God truth is most of the votes in the House of Representatives are procedural votes. And so probably everybody votes with Nancy Pelosi, not maybe 90% of the time, but a lot of the time, because it's just whether or not you're going to call a question, right? And if nobody objects, technically everybody's voted yes on that. So yeah, you can make this outrageous claim, and then maybe it sinks in. Studies also show that with regard to television, people have a tendency to watch. If you are a liberal, you're probably going to listen to what? If you're a liberal, which stations are you probably going to listen to in terms of news on television? Any guesses? Okay, well, let's do an easy one. If you are a conservative, what television station are you probably getting your news from? Fox, right? Okay, very good. We got the low-hanging fruit. Like Fox is, their motto used to be fair and balanced. And somebody else said Fox News. So they used to be fair and balanced. I can tell you they were not fair and balanced. If you're a liberal, you probably are listening to MSNBC or NBC News, right? They tend to be more liberal. CNN tends to be pretty moderate, although it leans more liberal. But Fox is clearly the choice if you're a conservative. So people tend to watch, in terms of the news, they tend to watch the news that fits their frame of reference, right? They're going to watch the news that fits their sort of bent. If you're slightly liberal, you're going to watch MSNBC or NBC. If you're really conservative, you're going to watch Fox News. If you're sort of in the middle, you might watch CBS, ABC, or CNN, something like that. But people have a tendency to watch the things that they agree with. That's not necessarily true of radio, because radio, you're not necessarily, unless you're listening to talk radio and you're listening to Rush Limbaugh or something like that, if you're listening to the radio in the morning, most people are listening to it for the music, and so they're going to choose their selection based on the type of music that they prefer, and not necessarily based on their political ideology, right? So you're less likely to select. You're selecting news channels based on your probably your political ideology, but you select music based on your music tastes, and so you're probably less likely to listen to something that absolutely fits your paradigm. The second reason is because you are distracted and you have clutter and you're not necessarily paying attention. You don't experience as much cognitive dissonance when somebody says something negative that goes against your frame of reference. You're less likely to push back against it because you're not fully engaged, right? And so you can plant these kernels. You can get this. You can get these seeds planted, and if you repeat it enough, it may be picked up. Somebody said because ads on radio run too fast and the driver can't pay enough attention. Yeah, so you're distracted. And if you can get in there, again, there won't be as much cognitive dissonance. So with regard to at least negative ads in political campaigns, people are more receptive to them on the radio than they are in television or in other aspects. Again, if you are on WebEx, you might want to switch to YouTube because the camera's not working. Television, the advantages, you get lots of coverage. So if you are a national company that is launching a new product, so let's think about the current crisis. The new COVID drug has been developed by two, which is the one that released it first, or not released it, but got the first really successful trials. Was it Pfizer? Is it Pfizer? I think so, yeah. That has got the most, they've got 95% success rate with their COVID-19. You can reach a lot of people if you're going to advertise that drug. If you're going to go direct to consumer, which we allow in this country of pharmaceutical sales, you can reach a huge amount of people on television because people watch television, right? So you can get a high coverage. You can get selectivity. You can choose markets. So for example, during the presidential campaigns this last year, we didn't see a whole lot, unless you were watching NBC, ABC, or CBS, you didn't see a whole lot of advertising. In our local stations and networks, because everybody sort of knew once the primaries were over where Oklahoma was going to go. And I know during the two terms that Barack Obama ran for president, not a single, we have 77 counties in Oklahoma, and not a single county went for Barack Obama. And I think that's true of this last election. I don't think we had a single county go for Joe Biden. The closest, I think, was Oklahoma and maybe Cleveland County in terms of the coverage there, but I don't think we had a single county. So everybody knew which way the presidency was going to go. So you don't bother wasting your coverage on advertising in places like Oklahoma. It allows for a great deal of creativity. You can tell stories, many stories in a television ad, right? I mean, they've got a beginning, a middle, and an end, right? In many of these ads. You've got character development. If you think about all of the ads that you hear for things like it's Medicare enrollment time. So Medicare enrollment runs through, I think, December 7th. So they're having all of these ads on television to try and get people to switch their Medicare coverage. And you've got these nice old people that are saying, I didn't know, and they're in their dining room or their living room. I could get rides to the doctor, or I could get hearing aids. You can build a story. You've got a lot of creativity. The disadvantages are the costs. It's enormously expensive to advertise on television. It's the most expensive medium to advertise on, even to this day. You've got an enormous amount of clutter. So you've got ads before and after, and then you've got programming in between, which, by the way, studies show, and this goes to zipping and zapping. So zipping is recording your programs, DVRing them or whatever you do, and then zipping through the commercials, right? So just watching the program. And then zapping is switching stations in between the commercials so that you avoid them. Studies show that you actually enjoy the program more if you listen to it with the ads. So one of the things that they've done is they've hooked people up to fMRI technology, and they've also tracked eye movement. So they use eye tracking devices and they use fMRI technology to do these studies. And they've looked at people who watch programs straight through without the ads and people who watch the programs with the ads. And the pleasure part of the brain and the activity of the eyes suggests that people enjoy the program more if they watch the program with the ads as opposed to without the ads. And the reason for this is that as you begin to watch a program, right, you can start to anticipate. Aristotle said, I think there's only something like 16 plots in the whole world, right, in terms of storylines, right? So let's think about this. Murder mystery shows are enormously popular. It's one of the most popular genres of television. I don't know why, but there are literally hundreds of these shows. CSI, CSI Miami, NCIS, NCIS New Orleans, Law and Order. I hate Law and Order. It's like I come home and my mother has got Law and Order on constantly, and she just loves it. She's like, "You're an attorney, don't you?" No, I don't. I don't love it. It's absolutely horrible. But you've got all these shows, right? Why is it that people get murdered? There are only like 3 reasons that people are murdered, unless it's just, the accidental shooting where somebody's just in the wrong place at the wrong. That's the minuscule portion of murders. Why do people get murdered? What are the motivations for murder?
Money.
What? Money. Yeah. Okay. So absolutely, money is a big motivator for murder. You've got grandpa, and you've got your drug habit that needs to be satisfied, and so you knock grandpa off so that you can get, you're left in the will. Ms. Hicks says revenge. Yeah, anger. That's another reason that people murder people, is for revenge. You've been done wrong. Your business partner swindled you. You need revenge, right? And revenge is a dish best served cold, but that's the other reason that people get murdered. So money, revenge. What's the third big reason that people murder somebody? There's a third big reason.
I don't know if this is like fall under the revenge, but like cheating.
Love, yeah. So money, love, and revenge. And I guess they can overlap, right? So you've got cheating, which is love or hate. And by the way, hate is not the opposite of love, right? Hate is a very thin line on the same side of the coin as love. What's the opposite of love? It's not hate. If you hate somebody, you've got a lot of passion for them. That's the same as love. It's very, very thin line. Indifference is the opposite of love. Indifference is the opposite. So somebody said betrayal. Betrayal is the same as revenge. So the big 3 are love, money, revenge, right? That's the reason that you get murdered. So you're watching this television show because there are only 3 sort of ways. And so like they have the cast of characters in the show, and everybody's usually got a motive to murder somebody, right? They've either have been having an affair with them, this person has been blackmailing somebody, and that's revenge, or they've got a lot of money, and so You know, they were a target for somebody that knew them to knock them off and try and get their money, right? So as you go through this, what happens is you reach points of homeostasis when you're watching the television program. So the more you watch it, the more you get to be really good at predicting the outcome, right? And so your enjoyment level, the part of the brain that functions, that registers pleasure, starts to decrease in activity as you go through the program. If you watch an ad, it disrupts the homeostasis. It triggers you to have to think about something else, and then you have to go back to figuring out where you were when you return to the program. So you actually, this is my shameless plug as a marketer to get you to watch ads, you actually enjoy programming more if you can watch the ads, because you then don't necessarily figure out as quickly what's going to happen in the program. The one exception to that would be, of course, competitive events, right? I mean, that it's hard to predict because it's a competitive event, and so you don't necessarily get the same pleasure if you got your attention distracted. It's a fleeting message and limited attention. So people do what when the ads come on? Even if you sit through them and you don't zip or zap, you have a tendency to pick up your phone. You start looking around. You play with the dog. I have prairie dogs that run around constantly in my house, and so I'm constantly picking up a prairie dog the minute the ads come on and playing with them. And so it's a fleeting message, and you have a limited attention span, and so it's easy to be distracted with television. The internet. This allows for a high degree of creativity. You've got sort of a combination of all of the others that we've talked about: print, television, and radio, right? You can have sound on the internet. You can have just print ads. Basically, you have banner ads at the top when you log on to Facebook, or side ads when you log on to Facebook that are just like print ads or magazine type ads. You can also have video. How many of you have been watching, as you watch YouTube? If you watch my YouTube channel, it should be free, I think, of ads, because I didn't click the little button to become a partner with YouTube, because I didn't figure that I was going to have thousands of people rushing to my YouTube channel trying to watch my videos. So I didn't partner, but lots of people are actually making money on YouTube. I've got a friend in Guthrie who does this. He teaches, I think, guitar lessons and something else. And he's made actual money by putting these up, editing them on YouTube. One of the things that I like to watch, there's a couple of brothers. So my brother and I both have boats. There's two brothers that decided about 7 years ago, in the early ages of YouTube, that they were going to sail around the world and they were going to make videos. And they've been doing this for 7 years. They make their entire living off of producing YouTube videos of them sailing around the world and all the adventures they have. It's called SV Delos. And they've made a living off of this. So you can make a living off of YouTube. Those involve ads, right? So you've got this pop-up that will come on that allows you to have, just like a television ad, you've got video, you've got music, you've got audio, and you can tell a story, right? So it's got a lot of flexibility. It's enormously cheap to put together ads on online. Now, historically, the way you advertised on the internet was you put together a website, and then you tried to draw or drive people to that website. And in the early days, the first website that we had developed for our business, I think, cost us a couple $1,000, because we didn't know anything about programming. And at that point in time, you had to know something about computer programming. You had to know some language in order to write code to get your stuff on the internet. That's no longer true, right? Anybody can put together a website. You can go on to GoDaddy or any of the providers, and you can develop your own sort of website. They've got templates, and you just put the content in, and it's a fairly decent product, right? So the cost has come down enormously in terms of from the start of the internet to what it costs now. You can put together ads and you can set a budget on Facebook or YouTube or anything like that, and you can do it for very little money and reach thousands and thousands of people. If you just joined on WebEx, I heard somebody just come in. The camera is not working, so I've got to tell tech support, so you might want to switch to the YouTube feed because you can't see the board. It's currently aimed off towards the south of the classroom. It allows for creative exchange. So the internet allows for value co-creation. It's not just a one-way form of communication. Billboards, print ads, television, radio, it's them advertising to you. You can actually engage with the company and the products. So it allows for creative exchange, and it's got a high degree of selectivity. You can actually engage in micro targeting very specifically individuals. And this has occurred with a high degree of precision in the presidential campaigns in 2016 and 2020. As a result of foreign interference, largely, we learned about this. And so those of us who didn't know these terms before, we became intimately familiar with them. They have been able to target individuals with a high degree of selectivity using the internet through things like bots and trolls. Okay, so what's the difference between a bot and a troll? What is a troll? And how does this work in political marketing?
It's like someone who says something to get attention, I guess.
Okay, so a troll is somebody who actually goes out, and what is a troll? I mean, historically, what's the image? Don't think about the cute little trolls that are the cartoon fictionalization. Historically, what was a troll? This like horrible creature that lives under a bridge that costs people and takes money, right? So a troll is a live person, and they have troll farms in Russia that actually, a troll is generally a hideous monster. I think of the ones from Harry Potter. Yeah, that's a troll, right? So they have these troll farms in Russia where they have trained these people to mimic American political discourse. They've even trained them in American slang so that they, initially when they first started out in 2016, it was kind of easy to tell maybe that somebody wasn't right there because they didn't have the correct, their grammar was correct, but it wasn't the same, the syntax lost meaning, right? They didn't have the same sort of slang and euphemisms that we use in everyday language. Well, they've trained these people now on how to go out and basically get hits and make posts on blogs and various things to drive people to alternative websites that have, that are promoting their sort of political agenda, right? And in 2016, it's overwhelmingly been proven that the Russians favored Donald Trump, and they did this. And so you can micro-target using algorithms. You can go out and you can find people in very specific locations on an individual level and target. You can micro-target those people to provide them with information that you believe is going to motivate them to vote, or to mislead them, or to suppress. So they did this in reverse, not trying to motivate people. They micro-targeted communities of color and provided misinformation on voting procedures and processes, right? So that's what a troll is. What is a bot?
A bot's more like a program.
A bot is an algorithm, yeah. It's a program that runs, that basically reposts. It figures out who is likely to be receptive to various types of posts and then reposts them. to those people to make sure that it's front of line, that they're getting the information, that you want them to get over and over and over again. So you can have a high degree of selectivity. The disadvantage is that there's a lot of clutter on the internet. We constantly are, if we don't find something, we're constantly flipping through to the next page or doing another search. With regard to lesser developed nations, if you have a product that you're going to sell on a worldwide market, there are still lots of places where they don't have internet, and that's going to be difficult to reach. Also, with regard to older consumers, why is it that Joe Namath is constantly, again, Medicare enrollment is currently going on, and so I have seen, and you all don't even remember who Joe Namath is, right? So it means nothing to you, but the reason that they're using Joe
He's a
Namath,
quarterback.
yeah, he was a quarterback, an NFL quarterback, but he would be remembered by people my parents' age, right? And so they're using him. He's now over 65, and they're using him as a spokesman for Medicare and getting all of the advantages that you are entitled to. And he's on television. Why is that? Because that population has the highest percentage of people that have limited or no access to internet. Or if they have access to it, they may not be as sophisticated in using it. I think the same is true in the developing world. You have lots of places where internet is not widely accessible, and so you may not have it. I know that's hard to believe, but I was listening to NPR this morning, and in New York City, there is still something like 35% of their school-age population. They were talking about how they're closing down the schools again, and you would think New York City, it's a big city, they've got lots and lots and lots of internet coverage all over the place. Everybody should have access to it, but 30% of their school-age population still don't have reliable access to the internet. And so that's largely as a socioeconomic phenomenon. So it's one of those things where, although it's increasing, and it's definitely been the largest explosion in terms of integrated marketing communication usage has been the internet, there are still lots of places that don't have it or people that still are resistant to it. Viewers often move on and are distracted. Also, with regard to the internet, another disadvantage is that you can have a pop-up, and I didn't put this on here. If you take my integrated marketing communication class, we talk a lot more about this, things like this. You can put pop-up blockers on so that you can avoid a lot of those ads that you don't want to see, right? You can put a pop-up blocker on. And your generation tends to be, one of the disadvantages of the internet is that if you are trying to target people and persuade them, the internet is generally used by people who have a high degree of sophistication. And so they may be less susceptible to those kinds of pitches. Now, obviously, my nephew, for example, came in the other day, and he was talking about he was going to go vote for Donald Trump, and he'd found all this information on the dark web. And I kept saying things like, maybe we should think about where we're getting our information sources from. But most internet users have somewhat of a tendency to be more sophisticated and can sort through this sort of stuff, although there are lots of people who are susceptible to conspiracy theories. I generally think that nobody can get organized long enough to have much of a conspiracy, trust me, but whatever. So viewers are often on the move and distracted, and they can be more intellectually sophisticated. We will talk more about personal selling on Tuesday, but for right now, personal selling is a two-way flow of communication between a buyer and seller. And the advantage is that it allows for control of the presentation. If you put out an ad on ABC, NBC, or CBS during, say, the Super Bowl, well, it's only carried on one station, but let's say you put an ad out on the Super Bowl for American cattle producers, beef is what's for dinner. I remember that they did an ad 1 year on the Super Bowl, right? And it was one of the beef, it's what's for dinner. You probably have a whole lot of people, much to my horror and dismay, because I grew up on a cattle ranch in northern New Mexico, and I do not understand people who don't want to eat beef, but there are a apparently an increasingly large number of people who are vegetarians. And we've even started to have the first vegetarian restaurant in Oklahoma City, I thought, well, that will last about 2.5 seconds and then it'll go broke. Because we are a cattle producing state, by the way. It actually survived, and we now even have, much to my horror and dismay, a vegan restaurant. What's the difference between vegetarian and vegan?
Vegans don't eat any kind of animal product.
No, not just eat, won't
Don't
use any kind of animal product, right? I mean, they like using the leather in your belt, using silk, turns in the words of my friend Angela, who's a vegan, it turns the silkworms into silk pores. And I'm like, I'm not sure they have that level of consciousness, but okay, whatever. So, you know, you put this ad out, beef is what's for dinner on the Super Bowl. And what happens? Well, you have a whole lot of vegetarians that are watching the Super Bowl. And that's wasted coverage on television. Personal selling, you can avoid that, right? If somebody has on their door, vegan, go away, and you're a meat producer, you're probably not going to get them to buy your product, right? You can just avoid that coverage. So you can control to whom the presentation is made. So it reduces the waste and coverage that you get from television and radio and other things where you're going to have people that are absolutely not interested in your product seeing it. It provides for instant feedback and can allow the salesperson to modify the message in real time. So you can tell whether or not somebody's going to buy. And you know at the end of the presentation whether or not you've made the sale or whether or not you're going to have to come back, try again. So it allows for you to modify the message in real time. The disadvantage is that it can lead to inconsistency, particularly as people become tired over the course of a day. They've made the presentation multiple times. Their enthusiasm level may be less, or they may, make promises that you can't keep. So it can destroy your integrated marketing communication, your attempt to totally control the message, unless you have a lot of really good quality controls and you monitor performance. And it's extremely costly. If you're selling consumer packaged goods, it's not going to be possible to send salespeople out to every single person, right? You're going to have professional salespeople that go into the grocery stores and convenience stores and try to convince convenience stores and grocery stores to stock those products. But you can't go out to every single consumer. That would just be completely unfeasible. So it's extremely high in terms of cost. So it can be costly. But there are some products that you're not going to be able to sell any other way. My sister is a vice president for Boeing. You don't see a whole lot of Boeing advertisements on television. Why? Because people don't go to Southwest, with very few exceptions. There's been a recent instance in which people did start saying things, I don't want to fly on that kind of plane. So people started calling the airlines and checking to see if their airliner was going to be a 737 MAX. This was before the FAA grounded all of them. There were several 737 MAXes that had problems. Basically, the plane would think that it's stalling, and as a result, it would nosedive. And the pilots were unable to control it, to override the program. They weren't trained in how to override the autopilot program that would keep it when it reached a critical attitude, which is pitch, from thinking that the plane was stalling and then nosediving. So you did have some people that were calling and saying, I don't want to fly if I'm flying on a 737 MAX. But that's very, very rare, right? People don't call up Southwest and say, I really want to go on a 747. Do you have a 747 for that flight? Can I book a 747? So Boeing doesn't advertise using television. Almost all of their advertising, or almost all of their promotion in terms of their promotional mix element is going to be through personal selling. Right? So depending on the product, personal selling may or may not be applicable. Public relations. There are many tools to use, and all large corporations engage in public relations. Now, the big disadvantage to public relations is that you can lose control of your message. Generally speaking, you want to speak with a unified voice and you want to control your message. And I suggested to you that George W. Bush was one of the best, most disciplined politicians I have ever seen in my entire life. And he was able to control his message. You could ask him what question you wanted to ask, and he would give you the answer that he wanted, which when he was running against Ann Richards was, we must cure juvenile crime in Texas, right? He had people believing that there were hordes of feral children roaming the streets of Texas, willing to rape, pillage, and plunder at any given moment. But you can lose control of your message, and Donald Trump is finding this out. They have been very lenient on Twitter and Facebook with regard to his posts, but they have started doing things, right? That's free. He can tweet. That's public relations, in essence. But what has Twitter started doing with regard to his message?
They started putting like little notifications at the bottom.
They have started putting notifications saying this is not true, or this information is not verifiable, or things like that. I mean, they have absolutely started targeting. You lose control of the message once you put it out there. Unlike advertising, where you paid for that spot and they can't override it. If they accept the ad, you have absolute control. You can lose control. So what kinds of tools can we use in public relations? Well, there are special events. Lots and lots and lots of corporations sponsor special events. Why do they do this? Well, because they think that people that are likely to use their products or services are going to be at those special events. So, for example, Rolex sponsors, somebody asked, is Twitter allowed to block or take down posts? Does that impede on our rights? Well, Twitter is, so basically the answer is Twitter is a private company, and they can absolutely monitor and control what you post on Twitter. And they have, for ordinary people, if I had put up some of the things that the president had said, and I'm not making a political statement, this is just fact, right? If I had put up things like the election is rigged, there's been massive amounts of voter fraud in Detroit, in Michigan, and in Pittsburgh, in Pennsylvania, I can absolutely guarantee you that Twitter would block my post. And if I continued to do it, they would probably deactivate my account, right? They've allowed the president, because they've said he's in a unique position, and because what he says is important to do it, but they have started putting up warnings, and they have told him that after January, and again, this is not my political stance, it's just a fact. Twitter has basically said after January 20th, 2021, if he does it, they will block the posts, right? They're just not going to allow him to post that kind of stuff. So Twitter is a private company. I think your question, Mr. Morris, is that correct? I think your question is it a violation of the First Amendment for them to do that? And the basic answer is no, because they are a private company. Now, they cannot stop you from putting stuff up on the internet that you want to put up. So there are platforms that have popped up, the most recent of which for people who tend to lean right is a platform called Parler, and I have not been on that platform, so I don't know how it works. I think it's similar to Twitter in that, but they don't, Parler's whole thing is that they don't screen or monitor any kind of content. They are simply a medium for the content to be posted. So that's a long answer to probably, well, should have been a short question. Special events. So you think that people that are likely to buy your product are going to be at those special events. Rolex has historically been the official timekeeper for a lot of tennis tournaments and a lot of equestrian events. Why? Because those events generally attract high income producers, and so they have historically sponsored those events. what can happen in those events, I think, for example, I may be incorrect in this, but I think the official timekeeper of an event called Aerospace America was Tag Heuer, if I'm not, I may be mistaken, but I know that they had an official timekeeper. What can happen even at a special event? So generally speaking, these are non-controversial. Rolex is the official timekeeper of Wimbledon or something like that. And they've got the Rolex symbol along the banners, along the sides of the tennis court, right? And they tell you that they're the official timekeeper. And during commercial breaks, it'll say Rolex, the official timekeeper of Wimbledon or whatever they're sponsoring. And generally, that's not a controversial deal. However, these events can go awry. When I was a kid growing up, the aerospace industry was one of the most attractive industries in my generation. We were fascinated by air and space travel. I can remember the first space shuttle launch. They took us in to the gymnasium and they set up televisions at the time, and we watched that launch over and over and over again, the first space shuttle launch. One of the most popular movies when I was growing up as a kid was a movie called Space Camp, and every kid wanted to be an astronaut, right? I started taking flying lessons when I was 12 years old, and so this was a big deal. There were all kinds of air shows all over the United States at that time, and one of the largest forever and ever and ever was one that was held here in Oklahoma City, because the FAA headquarters are actually here in Oklahoma City, and it was called Aerospace America, and it was at Will Rogers. And for 3 years in a row, they had major catastrophes. The last was one of the most prominent stunt performers in the nation, I believe, the last year that they had it. His plane crashed, and I think actually some of the debris fell into the spectator's side, and there may have even been some injuries. So you can have an event like that, and you're a sponsor, and if it goes really badly, people may get a negative association with you with that special event. Lobbying efforts. All major corporations and all major industries have lobbying efforts. Again, you can't control the message because you can't control what Congress or the state legislatures will do, but all of these organizations and all of these special interest groups attempt to do this. One of my friends who graduated with me from law school and then could never pass the bar, but comes from a politically well-connected family, is now the chief lobbyist for NASCAR. I have no idea why NASCAR, I've attempted to get him to tell me why it is that NASCAR needs a lobbyist in Washington, D.C., but apparently NASCAR does. I don't think NASCAR is a highly regulated industry, but apparently NASCAR has lobbyists in Washington, D.C. and in various states. Now I can understand why they might want lobbyists in various states, because the way sporting arenas are built is largely with public-private partnerships. So for example, when the Texas Rangers was owned by George W. Bush, he convinced the city of Arlington that there would be no more baseball in Arlington unless the Rangers built him a new stadium, which they did by passing something called the Arlington Sports Public Works Project or something like that. And they basically passed a sales tax, and everybody who paid sales tax in Arlington, mostly the citizens of Arlington, paid, part of their money into building the Texas Rangers a new stadium, which the Rangers then were able to buy for 10 cents on the dollar, by the way, and they're now building another new park for that process. So I can understand why you might want at a local level to have lobbyists. I'm not sure why they have a lobbyist at the national level, but obviously things like prescription drugs. They have huge lobbying efforts in Washington, D.C. to try and lobby things like the FDA to approve their drugs quickly and efficiently. Pfizer has come out with, and another company, I can't remember who the second company is, that's come out with the promising COVID vaccines. And what are they going to do? They're going to lobby heavily to get those vaccines approved as quickly as they can and distributed, right? So they're going to lobby the FDA and regulatory bodies to try and get those to try and get those drugs approved as quickly as they can so that they get them into distribution as fast as they can. Interest groups lobby at the state level as well and the local level for all kinds of things. AARP is one of the largest lobbyists in the country. They consistently lobby to keep healthcare costs for the elderly low, to keep Medicare costs low, and to keep the government funding Medicare and Social Security at high levels, right? So lobbying efforts are important. Annual reports. If you're a publicly traded company, you have to file these and usually put together a slick version of them that you send out to investors in order to try and get them to buy your stock, right? So these are based on the 10Qs, which are the quarterly reports, which I used to have to do when I was a vice president at AEC. We were a publicly traded and reporting company, so we had to produce 10Qs and 10Ks. Those annual reports, those SEC filings are then used as the basis for the annual reports to try and get investors to look favorably on your stock. Press conferences. Press conferences are used by almost every major business, right? They will release. So Pfizer, when they developed this drug, they initially had a press conference and they released the study finding that it was 90% effective in preventing the people who had taken the actual drug as opposed to the placebo from contracting COVID. Then they got new study numbers, they updated the research and they found out that it was 95 and they held another press conference, right? To tell people that it was 95% effective. Again, these are free, you get to go out there, the press is gonna cover things like that, but you can lose control of the message when reporters start asking questions. Like, what are the side effects, for example, of your drug? Oh, well, can lead to catastrophic heart failure. You might want to know that before you take it, right? So you can lose control. Publicity is non-personal, not directly paid. And again, the disadvantage of all of these is that you can lose control of the message. You can control it to a certain point, what you're putting out there, but what the news does with it, what does the news do? So President Trump holds these, and I think unfairly in many respects, I've seen this happen on MSNBC. They will take a snippet out and they don't tell you what he said before or after, and it's basically taken out of context, and it makes him look, like he said something really stupid. They do this all the time. They take snippets out, so you lose control of that message. You're up there, you're giving a press conference, because the news has control of it. They will play just the portions that they want, and I've seen this happen a lot, and I generally cringe at it. But that's the price you pay. Is it's free. People are going to cover you because you've got a big company and you're releasing a drug, or because you're president. But the way they cover you may not be flattering at all. They may selectively use portions of what you said. Right? Sales promotion. These are usually short term. So they try to arouse interest. These are very common with regard to consumer packaged goods. To try and, when they release new consumer packaged goods, to try and get people to try them. So what are the types that we can have? We can have coupons. And there are high-tech versions of coupons. What's the high-tech version of coupon? Anybody think of a company that's a high-tech version of a coupon? Probably some of you have used this. It's becoming less popular. It was very popular about 2 years ago. Honey. What is honey? Mr. Morrison. Ms. Gillespie says Groupon. That's the one that I was thinking of. Groupon is a high-tech version, right? They had offered a deal of the day. It was a coupon, 50% off. You got a barcode. Ms. Hicks says Groupon. I'm still trying to figure out, Mr. Morrison, what honey is. I've never heard of that one before. But those are coupons, right? High-tech versions, you get the coupon, you scan the barcode. It's like a promotional code site. It finds coupons online. Okay, so what was that? What was the big one that did the Ebates? Is that it? And Ebates is now something that's now Rakuten. Is that right? They've changed. So is Honey like Rakuten or Ebates?
Funny like is it's like an extension on your browser, and like if you're gonna buy something, it'll automatically apply and yeah, discount coupon codes that are available on the
Oh,
website.
okay, so it's like GoodRx, but for others stuff. Okay, all right. So GoodRx is another example of coupons. Rebates. I went to the optometrist a couple weeks ago to get my contacts renewed. There's a new contact lens out there that's supposed to be better and brighter and more wonderful than the last sets of contacts I was using. If you bought 3 months supply, you got nothing. If you bought 6 months supply, you got nothing. If you bought a year supply, they gave you a $150 rebate on trying. Now this gets people to switch contacts. It basically committed me to buying a year's supply of contact lenses, right, and trying them out basically for an entire year. And they offer these rebates. You have to send it in along with your prescription and the receipt showing that you bought an actual full year, and then they'll send you back $150. Most people, what happens is with the rebates, what do they count on? And this is what happens with a lot of businesses count on this as well with Groupon. They count on the fact that you'll never use it, right? You'll buy it, like Groupon is a purchase coupon. The rebates, they'll count on the fact that you'll never take the time to actually send it in and get the reward. But in theory, you get the money back. Samples. This is an interesting one because samples have been used historically. They've been passed out at grocery stores and things like that by live people. I was listening to a program on NPR the other day, and they said 50% of the jobs in existence in America today may be gone in the next 10 to 15 years. And I was willing to push back on that until, and this was several years ago, until I went to Sam's and I saw this. I went to Sam's that day, and this was there. You used to go to Sam's and there would be all of these people that were like lunch ladies, that would like make little stuff and they would hand out samples to you. They've largely done away with those, and they've now got this. Why? Because they don't call in sick for work. They don't give you, like I used to go to Sam's. I started volunteering to go to Sam's for my family when I was 16, when I first got my driver's license, because it was great. It was like free lunch. You go to Sam's, and I made friends with all of the little lunch lady-like people that were passing out samples. And I would just like have a little smorgasbord every Friday afternoon when I went to Sam's. Now they've got this FreeOS thing. It doesn't give you more samples than you are entitled to. You have to scan your Sam's card, and it dispenses one sample, and it won't give you any more, right? So samples, getting people to try things by passing out samples through a FreeOS or through people can be an effective way of introducing a product. Contests. What are contests? McDonald's does this all the time, or they used to in the past, and they still do it in Texas. The Tom Thumbs all do Monopoly contests. So you purchase goods at McDonald's, and they would give you either on your drink. If you bought drinks, there would be little tokens, little game pieces, so that you could try to win a car, jet ski, or $10,000, or I think the grand prize was $1 million, something like that. Nobody ever wins it because there's only one of those, right? And it probably gets thrown away somewhere. But contests, sweepstakes are another one, similar to contests. They can stimulate sales for the duration of the contest. So people may go to McDonald's to play Monopoly, but the minute it's over, they may switch back to whatever, Starbucks or wherever it is that they were going instead. Coupons may get people to try it, but if they don't really like it, they will probably go back to whatever brand of Tide or laundry detergent that they used before. So sales can drop at the end, and if they're continuously used, they can lose their effectiveness. And this happened with both JCPenney and Macy's. So once people respond to the reward structures, you should remember this, it's a test question. People respond to the reward structures that are in place, right? One of the reasons that I stand up here and I teach is because I am paid six figures to do this, and if I don't, I don't get paid, right? I mean, like, I'm evaluated on three things, and so I make sure every evaluation period I'm tenured, so I get evaluated every 3 years rather than every year. I make sure that I have this number of publications that I have to have, and I make sure that I've taught my classes and I don't miss, and I make sure that, you know, I do service, like I sponsor the sales team. And so I travel all over the country. I don't really view that as service, but the university seems to think it's good service. I kind of view it as a bonus to my job to get to travel and see different places and go. And I think sales students are generally a lot of fun. But that's service, so I make sure that I do that, right? People respond to the reward structures that are in place. If you give them coupons and you do that over and over and over again, you train them to do what? To wait for a coupon. And Macy's and JCPenney's both did this, JCPenney. They are both infamous for having sale after sale and coupon after coupon. So you get these coupons, you can pick them up at the store door, and it's, you know, like we're having a white sale. Everything is 20% off, and, you know, if you get a coupon, there's an additional 30% off the register on men's clothing or on textiles or on appliances or whatever. They trained their customer to wait for those coupons, and as a result, they did. JCPenney got a new CEO several years ago, and he decided, we're going to stop doing that. We're going to just become the Walmart of the department store. We're going to do everyday low pricing. And it was a miserable failure. And JCPenney's sales plummeted because they had trained their customer to respond to the reward structure of couponing, right? So it can become almost like an addiction, and if it's used continuously, it can lose its effectiveness, or it can have detrimental impacts on your ultimate revenue, because you train people to do that, and then they just wait, right? They just wait for the sales promotion or the coupon. So that can be one of the disadvantages. And also, it's incongruent with certain products, right? Rolex never offers a discount. There are no coupons for Rolex. They're never going to offer a coupon for a Rolex. It would just be completely antithetical to that model, because coupon insinuates that that it's a, you know, that there's a negotiation, or that there's less than you know, a luxury type good involved. So direct marketing, several types. So personal selling is direct marketing. So some of these categories obviously overlap. Direct mail, which has historically been a big deal. One of the things catalogs is also direct mail. It used to be called the Wish Book, and it used to come out. Sears and Roebuck published the Wish Book every year, and people waited for this historically. You could buy all kinds of things from Sears and Roebuck at one point in time. You could buy entire houses, and if you go to my hometown, Guthrie, just a few miles north, there are all of these homes that were actually in the latter part of the 19th century and the early part of the 20th century. Sears and Roebuck, you could order your complete house kit from them, and they would deliver it. And so you could buy houses, and there are all of these houses. They're called shotgun houses that are a product of being purchased from Sears and Roebuck. You could buy ponies from Sears and Roebuck at one point in time. You could buy farm equipment. It was called the Wish Book, and people would actually wait for it to come out every year, and they would thumb through it and look at it. Catalogs are still important, less so among your generation, but still among the traditionalists. Catalogs are a big deal. They still sell a lot of items through catalogs. Telephone sales, telemarketing had at one point in time almost completely died. It was completely dead as a result of the do not call registry. That has been destroyed largely, and as a result, telemarketing has made a huge comeback. I'm sure all of you have gotten at least one or two calls, probably one or two calls a day, from somebody who's going to tell you that your extended warranty, and you may not have had an extended warranty, so you may be wondering Why are they calling? Is about to expire, and wouldn't you like to buy a new extended warranty? Online, the advantages is that it can be direct marketing, can be customized to match the needs of a target. It can be adapted very quickly, particularly if you're doing online. If you're doing catalogs, that's not so true because once you have a run of the catalog and it's gone out, it's hard to recall those. The disadvantage is it can require up-to-date databases. This is true. So my brother, for example, is an avid fly fisherman. I don't understand this. I just don't get it. Not my thing, but he loves fly fishing. He gets a lot of catalogs from various fly fishing manufacturers, Orvis and a bunch of others. I'm sure he's still getting some of those at his address in New York because he's moved 2 or 3 times, and so you've got wasted coverage when that happens. So it requires up-to-date databases, which can be difficult in this day and age because the average person only stays in their home 7 years. Currently, that didn't used to be the case. It used to be that people bought a home, they got a mortgage for 30 years, they paid it off, and they stayed there. The average person switches homes almost every 7 years, moves. So the average home is on the market every 7 years. And of course, there's growing concerns about privacy. And as a result, there's a decline in response rates as people have started to worry about things like that. That's where I got in my first class, so we will stop there. If you feel cheated, you let me know, and we'll stay late on Tuesday. That will be our last face-to-face class. After that, everything goes online because next week is Thanksgiving, and we're not coming back after Thanksgiving. Is that correct? If you send me texts, I'll update those just as soon as I get finished here. If you're in face-to-face or if you talked, I think yours, Mr. New, you might send me a text to remind me to give you your bonus points for today. For those of you that got ducks, I'll give you your bonus points now. And I will see you all on Tuesday. I hope you have a good weekend. I'm going to end the stream. Thank you for watching.